I have some thoughts that I really want to get out of my head because I've been so bothered by it recently that I just felt I needed to say something. There is so much hatred in me and so much pain because of what other beings have to go through on a daily basis and what is experienced so much that it just doesn't seem like anything's gonna change. Like, first you have Apple wanting to ban not safe for work content on Discord, which is going to affect minorities and marginalized communities because it's gonna start determining what is, it's gonna have a gray area of what is and isn't right to have, you know? We need to start policing this because, you know, what if children see this stuff? But then what's going to happen is that it's going to determine what is not safe for work. It's going to determine what is bad and what is good until, like, you know, first it's going to get trans beings because, you know, maybe some beings talk about, you know, genital stuff, bottom surgery, top surgery, like stuff like that. So then it's gonna move over to, you know, it to go further and further up. Like it's not going to affect. It is not going to affect white cis het people. It's not going to affect cis het beings, white cis het beings. Because what's going to happen is that it's always marginalized communities and minorities that are affected first by these things. A good example of that would be on Twitter, where you have bigots that are allowed to say whatever they want, and yet minorities, such as, you know, trans beings, black beings, any other beings, trying to say, I don't know, trying to even call out bigots that are told, and like they get their tweets taken or their accounts suspended because of the fact that, oh, you said the T slur even though you're allowed to reclaim it because you're trans, and so we're going to ban you. And then you have it where it's like, I'm going to call out this transphobe. This transphobe is being obliviously, you know, bigoted and transphobic. And then they get banned because they said something like, but yet bigots are allowed to get away with the same thing said, but towards minorities. It just doesn't make sense, and it really bothers me. And then a more prominent thing is police brutality. I know so much happens because it's institutionalized and systematic, but it's a thing of it's so much unnecessary death and suffering. And while probably you understand all of that, I don't know why it's so hard for conservatives to listen to that. Like, it's just infuriating that they won't listen. Like, there's increased police funding so much. Biden even passed, I think, a $700 billion police increase or military budget increase that does nothing to, you know, take down police brutality, because what needs to happen is that the whole system needs to be taken off and destroyed because of the fact that so much is institutionalized and systematic. Like, the reason there are no good apples is because good apples are taken away or fired, and whenever bad apples appear and good apples call it out, they are fired or taken away or whatever. Like, you don't win. A cop pulled over a military guy, and even though I disagree with the military, you can still see that it was racism because they were in fatigues, they were clearly scared, yet they were held at gunpoint to get out of their Jeep, and it only got reported on, or the being that did it only got fired because of the clip of it was going viral, even though it happened back in December. And then when you have beings that are trying to protest against this stuff, they the right to protest is restricted severely. Like in Minnesota, they fired tear gas. They have like full body gear going against these unarmed, peaceful protesters, and even when they're quote unquote not peaceful, they're still like, you don't just murder. And then you have beings that try to justify it. You have racists that try to justify what the police do because, oh, they had a traffic violation 2 weeks ago, therefore it's okay. Or, oh, they peddled drugs or something. Like, even if some being is guilty, you do not murder. That is not how this works. Even set up by the Constitution and amendments that we already have, that is not allowed. You are innocent until proven guilty by a trial of your peers. And then after that, you have trans beings having their rights taken away, even though, we don't have rights to begin with. Like in Arkansas, trans youth have their health care taken away because their government's like, hey, we need to save children, save adolescents from experimentation, the Safe Bill or Safe Act that they passed, which just makes trans kids not allowed to have health care, like gender-affirming health care, which then affects them because, first of all, you're going to have trans beings that need hormones in order to live because they got a surgery in the past, not allowed to have it anymore. And even if you're not considering physical damage or, things that can happen, you have beings that have only hormones or need hormones to feel safe with themselves, comfortable with themselves in their own body. And, that risks self-harm and suicide, but no, they don't care because they want to make kids safer because they don't want to affirm who they are, so it doesn't make any sense, except from the point of bigotry. Then you have Florida, so I believe passed a genital inspection kind of bill where it's, hey, if we doubt what your gender is, we are allowed to inspect what you have, and you are not allowed to play in this sport because, it's unfair advantage. And then what ends up happening then is that you have cis beings who are then affected by that because, you have taller girls, you have shorter boys, you have intersex beings. Intersex beings need to be talked about too because they're often looked over in many discussions because this stuff right here is stuff that affects them that no being points out at all. And then even with just ignoring those two, you have 33 states they're trying to pass anti-trans bills. They might not pass it all, but they sure are, getting proposed by beings in government. Even in the last COVID relief bill, Republicans tried to ban trans beings in sports, and the only reason that it didn't pass was because one Republican had to be at home in Alaska and couldn't attend. It was a 50-49. Sure, Kamala Harris might have overridden it, but at the same time, the fact that almost passed. And then with our next thing, we have pluralphobia. As some being who is plural, you have me and you got 5 others. You have a pluralphobic movie that's trying to come out about this being who had quote-unquote multiple personality disorder, which is an outdated term and incorrect in many ways because it's not multiple personalities because we are all fully fleshed beings, and if not fully fleshed, then at least, we're able to have some distinction that makes us individually. It was on Twitter where one thing said, or maybe it was the article itself, or whoever was being quoted, is that they called it multiple personality disorder, which makes plural beings more affected because they are going to get mistreated, they are going to be treated as acting or mocked because, oh, you don't exist. There's only one of you, and you just think that there's multiple of you. Like, that's not how it works at all. And then, even then, of course, you have all these things here, and then you have leftists on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Twitch. And even though they say they want to help and all, they kind of don't. At least these particular ones, Vaush and ContraPoints. They have platforms while being bigots themselves. Any being that calls them out on Twitter gets harassed or threatened, because I have seen it myself on Twitter where Vaush says something about trans beings or Vaush is being ableist in some sort of way, and then fans go like, no, he's justified in that. No, he's allowed to do that. Or, he didn't mean it like that. Even though he has justified himself using the N slur because of the fact that, oh, I was using it so I could dunk on the liberals and the conservatives. And then you have his transphobia, where he said bad things about trans beings, and while not maybe saying it in the typical phrasing, I guess, he still called out, like, all these beings that criticize me, they're usually trans, and then he calls, us mentally ill for whatever reason. And then you have ContraPoints. While I have not watched anything on ContraPoints in a while, she's definitely still non-binary phobic. Like, she's still, aggressive. Maybe not aggressive, but, like, she denies existence. Like, you've seen it's happened before. And then when she was quote-unquote canceled for that, it's the same thing with Vaush, is that her fans started to go like, no, she meant this, she meant that. And then, more minorities, non-binary beings especially, were like being threatened and harassed because, hey, I don't know, bigots don't really justify. They have weird reasons, and I don't get it sometimes. But to wrap it all up, I just want to say that I really want to fight all this. I really want to know how to dismantle this stuff. I really want to know what I can do, but I really don't know how to do it. Like, I would go to a protest, but none of them happen over here. I can't drive myself, and my parents wouldn't let me leave. If you want to do anything that you believe would make a difference, go ahead and do it. Don't talk over minorities. Just while you yourself can make change there, it's important to also listen to those more largely affected by, the system. Don't speak over beings of color if you're white. Don't speak over trans beings if you're cis. Don't speak over plural beings if you're a singlet, just one being. Apologies if any of my words have been confusing at all. It's just trying to think of the right thing to say, but not having enough time to say it, feels like. But either way, hopefully you can find something you can do to cause change. Do whatever you feel is necessary in right terms. Like, if you want to do violence, if you want to throw Molotov cocktails, you go right ahead. Just as long as you're doing it and not, and black beings aren't getting blamed for it. Just remember, don't speak over minorities if you are not a minority. Remember that even though some beings claim that they are leftist, are not leftist at all, or should be, or if they are, they should not be listened to, and they should be called out when they do something wrong. Don't mock plural beings. Don't be ableist. Remember to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves. If you're able to speak out against transphobia, police brutality, racism, ableism, and all that from your position, speak out against it as much as you can. And with that, thank you for listening to me spiel and rant and all that, so goodbye.